WisdomTree Prime has launched one of the newest Visa debit cards on the block, and head of digital assets Will Peck joins First Mover now to tell us why this matters for the digital asset space. Will, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Jen, good morning.
Good morning. Let's talk about this Visa debit card. It is something that when I hear about it, and you're probably going to be mad at me for saying this, it reminds me of the bull market, because last bull market, we had a lot of Visa debit cards launched by a lot of different crypto native firms. Now WisdomTree Prime is launching their debit card. Tell me a little bit about how it works.
Yeah, well, we've been working on it a lot longer than the bull market has been. But no, this has been part of our plan for our digital assets initiative, Wisdom Tree Prime, from the start, connecting saving, spending, and investing, and obviously connectivity with the card networks is a big part of spending, in addition to things like ACH. So effectively, the Wisdom Tree Prime debit card just allows you to spend kind of your available balance that you hold in your Wisdom Tree Prime wallet. Right now that's just going to be kind of the dollars that we have in there, Wisdom Tree dollar tokens. But over time, we anticipate making things like Bitcoin, Ether, digital gold available to connect directly to the debit card, which we think is, a good consumer use case. I mean, I think what's different than us versus other crypto companies that have launched cards in the past is this isn't like a crypto rewards card or anything like that necessarily. And it's not just crypto. Like I said, I mentioned things like gold, which is kind of the original currency. So in some sense, it's giving people a lot more choice in terms of how they want to save and spend their assets, which is really what we're trying to do with Wisdom Tree Prime generally.
Let's take a step back for the audience and just briefly tell me about WisdomTree Prime. I know WisdomTree Prime launched their app last year, and you were on the show talking about that, but just give us a brief introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a personal finance app, save, spend, invest. I wouldn't call it a trading app, but we've got a series of curated investment exposures across the crypto, commodities, and gold, and then a suite of what we call digital funds, which are effectively, U.S. registered funds that invest in things like stocks, bonds, securities, anything that there could be asset allocation strategies. So, but we've curated it in a way such that it's not like a trading app where you'd go in and kind of speculate on a lot of things that are kind of mooning right now necessarily, but it's a way to save, spend, invest across these curated set of assets, and we've done it all in a blockchain native way, which allows us to do things like connect your investments more closely to payments, for example. Also allows us to more easily interact with assets, that you might hold in other wallets elsewhere. So blockchain on and off ramps are a big piece of this. So that's why we've built it. And just as a historically an asset manager, we saw this as a great way to connect directly to retail and allow us to serve them in a better way than they might be being served otherwise.
Now, for the Visa debit card, you mentioned that right now it's available for the tokenized dollar in the Wisdom Tree Prime app. What is a tokenized dollar? Is that similar to a stable coin for
It is a
folks who
stable.
might be
It's a
watching
stable
this?
coin. It's a stable coin just by another name, and we don't. We just make it available within the Wisdom Tree Prime app. It's not available kind of outside like USDC or Tether might be, but we just found it to be a better way to allow consumers or allow our users to hold dollars within the app. So instead of sitting in like a bank account balance, they might say they've got a dollar token as the representation in the app, which is I think just an example of how people are using stable coins today beyond just crypto trading or the like.
Okay, so I think it makes sense if we talk about using a stable coin for payments, but then we start getting into Bitcoin, Ether, gold. Talk to me about the interest you've had from users in being able to spend these assets that I think right now when we think about any of those three, we think about investing, holding, not necessarily spending on a cup of coffee. Talk to me about the demand there, or what kind of demand you expect to see.
Well, I think people think about these as alternative currencies or investments, right? And if you want it to be a currency, it needs to be available to spend in a better way. And look, it's all about consumer choice to me. I think if you are somebody that really wants to save in Bitcoin and kind of embrace the volatility of it, like more power to you, but you kind of need the tools to be able to do that in a safe, secure, and cost-efficient way to be able to spend. So that's the idea behind it, is giving users choice. I mean, another example outside of those three digital assets might be, we've got a suite of funds that I mentioned, like funds today. You've got short-term treasury funds or a money market fund that could be yielding something like 5% in short-term government debt. Very competitive with a savings account, right? Where many savings accounts today, different products to be clear, but your bank is not paying you 5% in nearly any product that they're offering. So for a lot of people, that's a very interesting product to be able to keep more of their assets at work longer in things that are traditionally very safe investments like government securities, but that are now yielding 5% given where rates are. So that's that's something that I think is interesting to a lot of people, that the same underlying infrastructure and technology allows us to deliver, whether it's gold, Bitcoin, Ether, or things like these funds.
It's tax season, and so I have to ask this question. As I was reading through, the card will allow you eventually to sell your digital assets and then buy something using your Visa debit card, whether that be a coffee, a slice of pizza, or but I don't know, a car. Is there a tax implication here when you're making transactions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, capital gains tax is just the reality of life here in the U.S. And I think there's some, been talk in the past about Congress doing some sort of de minimis exemption for crypto assets. Nothing like that has kind of come to pass so far. So, look, it goes both ways, though. If you're, selling at a gain, then you're going to own taxes on that. If you're selling at a loss, right, you can use that loss and use it to offset other gains in different places. So, I think over time, this is not where we're at today, but over time, you can start to see some ability to more sophisticatedly manage this in a way that could allow you to, manage your tax bill as you'd like to. That's not where we're at right now, and certainly there would be tax, consequences for people who want to sell a capital asset like Bitcoin for their day-to-day spending, and that's the case with any app that you want to use like this.
Do you think it makes sense to sell your Bitcoin for everyday spending, or do you think it makes more sense for something that's maybe less volatile than Bitcoin?
It's all about how you want to manage your own assets, right? And like thinking about it as part of a broader portfolio. But like Bitcoin for sure is volatile, right? There's no doubt about it. Bitcoin is volatile. Yeah, if you're putting your life savings into Bitcoin and like that's what you're spending everything from, like I don't need to rehash that on this show. So yeah, sure, but like what about gold, right? Gold is something that's much more stable. People might like to save in it, and people do certainly want to save in it. We've seen that for a long time here in the U.S. And just providing that user choice is, I think, a good benefit for them. But maybe Bitcoin is a niche product in terms of saving for that, but that's the choice that consumers want to make, and we want to facilitate that.
Take a step back for me now. What does this mean for the industry? What does this mean for the progression of the digital asset space? I guess how does this push us forward?
I think it's just real world use cases, right? Like this is not the be all end all of everything allowing somebody to spend Bitcoin on their Visa debit card, but it is real world use cases for blockchain in terms of trying to connect it to people's day to day financial lives. Moving this from like a place of speculation to actually a place where like it can just be what you use to kind of manage your money on a day to day basis. So that's a big part of what we're doing, trying to, people have talked about tokenization for years now in terms of actually adding benefits to consumers. And what we're doing is actually going out there and then demonstrating that. So that's why, the debit card is one component of this and one we're very excited about, but it is about showing that this technology can just have benefits for users beyond, speculation and or investing, whatever you want to call it, trading, but actually in their day-to-day financial services lives.
Tokenization of assets is something that TradFi has been talking a lot about in recent months. Any hurdles there that you foresee in the future when it comes to real world assets and tokenizing these traditional financial products?
Yeah, I mean, it has been talked about for some time, and I think there's been a lot of people who've been stuck in kind of doing these various POCs and things like that, as opposed to putting out like real products for consumers. So there's lots of barriers to entry and, things that need to be overcome whenever you're doing kind of replatforming of financial services, new technologies. Like, for example, when, WisdomTree launched, ETFs were a fraction of mutual funds, right? And today, ETFs have overtaken mutual funds vastly in terms of the amount of inflows that they take in on an annual basis. That takes time, though. Like the SPY Spider sat there for something like 10 years, not getting in inflows. And then today, right, it's the most traded security in the world. So these things take time, and it's about, I think, firms putting out products that they think are going to be better for customers and then winning adoption that way, as opposed to like moving everything en masse all at once. So that's been our approach. And you're seeing more and more people actually putting out live product in the space, trying to also abstract away like, oh, this is blockchain or tokenization. It's like, oh no, this is something that's like better for users of financial services, whether you're the smallest retail investor or the biggest institution. And that's what we're trying to do at WisdomTree.
I think we'll know we've made it when we're no longer saying tokenization, we're no longer saying blockchain. These products are just things that are integrated into everyone's lives.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
You mentioned customer adoption and meeting customer needs. I know you were on the show last year when WisdomTree Prime launched its app. Talk to me about the adoption that you're seeing there. How are consumers reacting to it? I assume good since this debit card is being launched now. But talk to me about adoption there.
Yeah, it's still early for us. We're continuing to get our state licenses as we've talked about in the past, but it's been a very strong start for us in terms of, most importantly, our learning, seeing how customers are using the app, which types of assets, funds, investments they're tracking to, and then with the debit card, we'll see how they want to use the debit card more and more going forward. So it's been a really good start for us. We're very excited about it. We've got some other announcements for it coming out soon, both on the WisdomTree Prime retail side and also how we're going to be serving institutional customers as well. So it's we're not kind of giving out numbers at this yet at this point, but it's been a strong start for us.
Any hurdles or challenges in getting the state licenses, or has it been relatively smooth?
No, I mean it is hurdles and challenges. It's been interesting in the U.S. that money transmission is a state by state regulated activity, right? Which a lot of the digital asset services kind of fall within that money transmission kind of regime in different states, and it doesn't make it easy when companies like FTX or others blow up and kind of cause a lot of consumer damage, frankly. So I think we're working well with the various regulators that we're interacting with. I think we've had a great approach here. WisdomTree is a TradFi company that's well regulated, that's kind of comfortable with it. But certainly, I think anyone who's been going through these processes with various regulators in the U.S. would just say, yeah, it's like a lot of work and slow going, but it's certainly worth it and worth it to build that sort of rapport with the regulators.
It's interesting you bring up FTX. I feel like we haven't spoken about FTX. It feels like forever, but in this industry, forever can just be a few days. From a regulatory perspective, it sounds like we're still recovering from the downfall of FTX. In your experience, would you say that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, right? A lot of people, how many people actually know so much about crypto beyond these things? And the biggest news story, front page of the Journal and the New York Times, is that this kind of guy that's been on a bunch of billboards blows up. Like it doesn't make it necessarily easy to, and like with a terrible fraud too, right? It wasn't like something, it was like a horrible fraud that, it, yeah, I think that's something that people are always going to need to kind of continue to work over, work through. I think you're seeing a lot of crypto companies in the US being responsible citizens, though, doing right by their customers, even if there's hiccups along the way or whatnot. And so I think there's still going to be that. That will probably continue for some time. I think crypto is also political in a way that other technologies and asset classes are not, and that probably adds some challenges too. So I think look, I think a lot of regulators have been open-minded about this. Policymakers are trying to understand it and reflecting well, understanding the asset class well and kind of the policy implications of it well. But it doesn't necessarily make it easy when things like FTX happen, and I think that will continue to be the case.
It sounds like you're still trucking along though, regardless of FTX. It sounds like regulators, lawmakers are still listening. Hopefully, we can get some legislation this year. But as the months go on, I don't know if we will before the next elections. But it sounds like it's not all doom and gloom.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, I think there's our CEO speaking at the DC Blockchain Summit, put on by the Chamber of Digital Commerce in May, and I was just looking at the attendees for that, and from both parties, very senior people attending. I think you are getting a sense that not that everything in crypto is like there could what you want to talk about meme coins and things like that, but like there's a lot of serious companies, both traditional companies and new entrants who are trying to put out good products for customers, trying to use this technology to innovate. Whether you've got people like PayPal, BlackRock, one of our biggest competitors, or us, and I mean that's definitely different than it was, I think, 7, 8 years ago when a lot of this started. So I think it's certainly coming. I think the regulators are open-minded and working, even if they're getting caught up on a lot of this stuff and things like that. So definitely not doom and gloom. I mean, you look at the asset prices and even beyond that, just the activity in the space is very encouraging.
Well, it's always a pleasure having you on First Mover. Thanks so much for joining the show.
You too, Jen. Thank you.